Hi everyone and welcome to today's video. This is a B2 level grammar lesson. We're continuing our discussion of continuous verbs, and so this is past perfect continuous part 2. And here is an example. You haven't been doing your homework. So now we're going to look at the comparison between past perfect simple and continuous. So we'll read the two sentences and then you can put your answers in the comments as to whether you think there is a difference in meaning between the two sentences. So A, the coach was angry with Seb because he had not attended basketball practice, and the coach was angry with Seb because he had not been attending basketball practice. So you can write down what you think the difference is with the meaning of those two sentences in the comments. So in sentence B, the speaker emphasizes the duration of the action. In other words, Seb missed practice repeatedly, not just once. Now we'll look at how to form the past perfect continuous negative. You use the subject plus had plus not plus been plus the ing verb. So I had not been singing, you had not been reading, he had not been painting, she had not been watching, it had not been making, we had not been drinking, and they had not been building. You can also use a contraction. The contraction hadn't, but otherwise the structure is the same. It's the subject plus hadn't plus been plus the ing verb. I hadn't been singing, you hadn't been reading, he hadn't been painting, she hadn't been watching, it hadn't been making, we hadn't been drinking, they hadn't been building. Now complete each sentence with the past perfect continuous negative, and you can choose the correct verbs from the boxes. You can pause the video, try this on your own, and then restart when you're ready to check your answers. Owen didn't understand what to do because he hadn't been listening to his teacher. Sophia was tired because she hadn't been sleeping properly. Jasmine was worried about her piano exam because she hadn't been practicing for weeks. Tim loved that TV show, but he couldn't follow it last night because he hadn't been watching it for a few months. Giles fell over because he hadn't been watching where he was going. Megan didn't feel comfortable about going to the Alps with her friends because she hadn't been skiing in many years. Evan hadn't been traveling in a long time, so he was really looking forward to his vacation in Florida. Sydney and Nathan were dropped from the basketball team because they hadn't been playing well in recent games. Now choose which is the best option to complete the sentences. Again, you can pause the video, try these on your own, and then restart when you're ready to check your answers. Joan decided to water the garden because it hadn't been raining much. They had been learning Japanese for 6 months when they decided to quit the course. Alicia sent her child to see a nutritionist because she hadn't been eating properly and she never had any energy. Helen had been calling Tim for 3 minutes when she realized he was wearing headphones and couldn't hear her. So the past perfect simple and continuous are similar, but there are differences in how we use them. We use the past perfect simple when the duration of the event is short. She had locked the door by the time I arrived home. We use the past perfect continuous to emphasize the duration of the action. He had been trying to sleep for 3 hours, but there was so much noise that he couldn't. We also use the past perfect continuous to show the action wasn't finished. They had been driving for 3 hours when they realized they were lost. I put the verb in the correct form to complete the sentences. More than one answer might be possible. Use the past perfect simple, the past perfect continuous, the past simple, or the past continuous. And you can pause the video, try these on your own, and then restart when you're ready to check your answers. Jose had been waiting at the station for an hour when the bus finally arrived. Tom was walking the dog when it started to rain. Gordon and Julie had completed the report before they left the office for the day. While we were watching TV, there was a car accident in the street. The wind had been blowing for about an hour when it started to rain. Thomas and Mary arrived at the restaurant after we had finished our main meals, so we all shared desserts together. I had been knocking at the door for ages before Geraldine answered. She had been taking a shower. And if you had different answers than the ones I came up with, you can share those in the comments and explain the reason why you chose the answers that you did to generate some discussion. Now remember, for state verbs, we usually use simple tenses. John took the day off because he had been tired for a week. So we would not say John took the day off because he had been being tired for a week. Joe hadn't remembered to return her library books for weeks, would be correct. But we would not say Joe hadn't been remembering to return her library book for weeks. Now look at the following sentences and decide if they are correct or incorrect. And if they're incorrect, you can go ahead and correct them in the comments. You can pause the video, try these on your own, and then restart when you're ready to check your answers. So Natasha was happy because she hadn't been forgetting to do her homework once this year. Well, that would be incorrect. It should be because she hadn't forgotten. Florence had been thinking about it for a week before she finally made a decision. That one is correct. Andrew and Sarah had been having 3 children by the time they turned 30. That's incorrect. It would be Andrew and Sarah had had 3 children by the time they turned 30. He had been hearing the alarm 3 times before he jumped out of bed. That's incorrect. It should be he had heard the alarm 3 times before he jumped out of bed. Now make full logical sentences using the sentence halves. Again, you can pause the video, try these on your own, and then restart in order to, when you're ready to check your answers. So by the time we arrived at the theater, the play had already started. The driver had fled the accident scene by the time the police arrived. By the time we reached the top of the mountain, the sun had set, and the plane had left by the time we checked in. So now make some logical sentences using the words with by the time. Remember to change one of the verbs to the past perfect, and you don't need to use all the verbs in the sentences. So pause the video, go ahead and try these on your own, and then restart when you're ready to check your answers. Okay, so Karen left the party before me. I arrived at the party. So it would be by the time I arrived at the party, Karen had already left. I arrived at the meeting at 5:45. The meeting started at 5 p.m. By the time I arrived at 5:45, the meeting had already started. I saw a woman steal a car and I called the police. She disappeared before the police came. So by the time the police came, the woman who had stolen the car had disappeared. My brother woke up late and came downstairs. I ate my breakfast for a while before that. By the time my brother woke up and came downstairs, I had been eating my breakfast for a while. Here are a few more. They arrived in San Francisco. They had flown for 16 hours. So by the time they arrived in San Francisco, they had been flying for 16 hours. Sonia went to bed. Sonia had read the book for 3.5 hours. So by the time Sonia went to bed, she had been reading the book for 3.5 hours. Carrie arrived at the bookstore. She had walked for an hour. By the time Carrie arrived at the bookstore, she had been walking for an hour. I joined the online weekly meeting. The other people had waited for me for more than 10 minutes. By the time I joined the online weekly meeting, the other people had been waiting for me for more than 10 minutes. They reached the train station. It had rained for hours. So by the time they reached the train station, it had been raining for hours. Now, this is a writing exercise, and you can do the writing on your own. And if you'd like some feedback, you can put your writing samples in the comments. It says, imagine you arrived at school or work late. Before you arrived, what had the other people been doing? So you should write 5 sentences using appropriate past continuous forms and try to be creative. And here's an example for number 1. Before I arrived, the teacher had been explaining an important topic to the rest of the class. And then you can go forward from there and write your other sentences. And here's some speaking practice that you can do on your own. If you use your sentences from the previous slide and try to find a partner and ask follow-up questions to find out more about the situation. So here's an example. Before I arrived, the teacher had been explaining an important topic to the rest of the class. And the other person says, oh yeah, what had the teacher been talking about? And that brings us to the end of today's video. Please like, subscribe, share, participate in the comments, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.